and pages are virtues and the vices of each. On the virtue of middle class governance is the stability that it creates. That when people are not hungry, when most people are satisfied, they have something to look forward, they create a stable government, that it is not subject of upheavals, ups and downs of revolution and tumultuous changes. So he's very matter of factual. Now, the difference with Plato is that Plato wants to have the guardians and the auxiliaries separated and perform a function, and therefore wants to train them and have, for example, they cannot have any gold or silver. Aristotle says, well, you can, what is ideal is not possible, therefore let's not talk about it. Let's see what we have, what we can do with it. Now watch this. Now I'm going to go back to the main point, and this becomes one of the most significant contribution of Aristotle. He says, and this may even put some of the Iranian debates within the Iranian community to rest. He says, any one of these could be great. All of them, every one of these three good ones can be good if you have good laws. If you have constitution, if you have good laws and constitution, any one of these can be good. If you have bad laws, no matter what you have, is messed up. So here is their call for constitutional, legal forms of government, that anyone can be good. Any one of these can be good. If you have good constitution and you have this avoidance of the extremes. Questions? Go.
One question that arises for me is, as you said, everyone has a different happy median or mean. Would it be true then that the question arises for Aristotle that at a point, like every government would come to the same level? Like, for example, if you governed barbarians and you governed, like, let's say elitists who had no respect for the arts, like, would you gradually bring them to the same level?
As far as I understand your question, as the situation changes in your community, the form of your community, the ideal form, also may change. In other words, if you had a community of a particular kind, let's say you had a community that was lopsidedly, the ratio of free men to slaves were locked, or the ratio of haves to have-nots, and this is the pathology of these types of government like Libya or Egypt, that you have a gap between the haves and the have-nots, but not only in terms of financially, but also in terms of power, political power. He says that's a prescription for disaster. The reason moderation comes into this, because where is the moderation in Libya? Look at the gap between the haves and the have-nots. Look who has stayed in power for so many years. Look, and then you say, aha, this is a prescription for disaster. He will predict that there will be revolutions sooner or later. He will predict that you don't have a middle class, you've messed up. You have poverty, you have crime, you have high crime. You see all of these? High crime, ignorance, you see? Again, it goes back to Socratic dictum. Virtue is knowledge. If you want a good society, you train them. You give them an education. So, for example, when we say, Bernard Lewis says that, well, the problem with the Islamic communities is that they have shut out 50% of their population, namely women. They're not educated, they're not, now this is you look at it, you said, if you want a good community, you get the entire force of your community to help, and women are 50% of the population, they should be educated. So, yeah, so if you look at that imbalance, then you have to adjust what needs to be done. So, the example would be, let's say you're fasting, and when you're fasting, then you cannot eat as much, right? Because your stomach shrinks and you cannot eat as many times as you used to, nor can you eat as much. So, relative to your condition, what is ideal when you fast is different than when you're not fasting. Or when you're playing basketball or physical stuff as opposed to mental stuff. I gave you the example, Michael Phelps, I think he eats 10,000 calories a day. Now 10,000 calories a day, that's 5 times normal. but look at how trim he is. Why? Because it's relative to his, you see? Whereas I can eat 10,000. Are you kidding me? 10,000? I mean, I could, but I won't be coming here when we come get it through the door. The point is, that's the happy mean that you have to find out for yourself. But that doesn't mean there's no standard. That doesn't mean there's no absolute right or wrong. It's situational, right? It depends on the situation. Question? Good.
Sorry, I cannot digest these things, because now I am saying you, for instance, I am claiming that I've been reading Quran, I've been reading Bible, I've been reading all of the Baha'i texts, so I know exactly what God wants, so I command you to obey me. And based on our religious view, let's say we are in a religious community, so you should obey me. You know what I mean? And it's conditional, it depends on the situation, it's you know.
The question becomes, to whom do you trust the mantle of governance? That's the question. Who should be?
He said that God, the best one. Aristotle said,
no,
he said that
no. He would, first of all, for Aristotle, there is no God like that, there's a God like this.
Exactly.
It's a lowercase. So it says, if there's a God amongst men, meaning that if someone is so knowledgeable, so good, then find him and give it to him. But he said, you can't find it. You don't have one. He said, you don't have anyone like that. It's hard. How many times you see? Look at Aristotle. Aristotle went to train Alexander the Great. Okay, he trained Alexander the Great, look. I mean, the failure of knowledge, and he left. I mean, think about it. He was tutoring him. And so the question is not that even when you try. So he's saying, okay, he's saying don't do it. No, the question and answer you can cut, yeah. Oh, two. So my point is, take Aristotle as a whole. The virtues, it's important to see why you're doing this. It was clear that Plato wanted to, above all, justice was the most important thing. Above all, for Aristotle, is to be true to your nature. And the nature of man is that he's a community, social, political animal, and therefore the practical and intellectual virtues are the key to having a good human being, well-balanced human being that has avoided the extremes, not only within yourself, but outside of yourself in your community.
Just can we say by God he meant impossible condition?
By God,
just put something which is not reachable. Then you look for another option.
No, but in one sense he says, if you can, I mean, look at the burden of, it's just like Hobbes later on says almost the same thing. Hobbes says all these religious people, they say the church, that we know everything, and he says, well, everything is a question of debate and consensus. That if one of these priests, very nonchalant he says this, if somebody has direct revelation, then we see who that is, then we listen to him. Because how are you going to prove you have direct revelation? So he's making the burden so high that no one qualifies. And he's making fun of them. He's saying, well, which one of you has direct revelation with God? So you can pose the same question to other authority. How? Why should we trust you? Notice that he's not saying you trust it to one man. He's saying, who should rule? What if the city is comprised of different types of people? What group? And here is his sensitivity toward class, haves and have-nots, slaves and non-slaves. The balance, the constitution, the balance. So that's what he wants. The balance of power. That's the meaning of republic or res public or public affair or public polity. That's what he wants to do.
Oh, I understand.
You can stop.
Okay.
Go ahead.